Hi friends! So, one of the things that I probably started doing first in really learning to cook from scratch and really trying to replace foods was bread. And bread is something that a lot of people want to do, but it can be intimidating. And sourdough is a huge, huge thing right now. And sourdough was just not a very good fit for our family. Not because it's not unhealthy, but there were several of us that just didn't really like it. We didn't really like the taste of it. And sourdough would take me all day to do. And that's okay, but they were still just a flavor issue that some of us really didn't enjoy. So one day somebody gave us a loaf of bread, and my husband was like, this is amazing. Like, this is the kind of bread that I want to be eating. And little did I know I had the cookbook on my shelf. So we got to talking about it, and I realized I have that recipe and I had never tried that. And once I started making this bread, we've never looked back. Now, this recipe does not work very good if you're making pizza dough, hamburger buns, dinner rolls, you know, that kind of thing. I have a completely different recipe for that. But for our bread eating, this is the cookbook that we use. And she has lots and lots of different variations, but the one that I use is the master recipe. Okay, there are 4 ingredients, and that's it. It's very similar to the ingredients in sourdough. The main difference is sourdough you use a starter, and this bread we use yeast. So if that's something that you're like, no, I don't want yeast, then this is probably not a bread you want to do. However, this is very, very convenient for me. It makes about 4 small loaves in one batch, or sometimes I make like a bigger loaf of bread and I split it in 2 instead of 4. If you're a smaller family, this is something that can easily be cut in half. My mom, you know, it's just her and Dad living over there, so when she makes this recipe, she cuts it in half and makes 2 small loaves, and that works for them. So we're going to dive right on in, and I'm going to show you how simple it is. First thing I want is 3 cups of lukewarm water. Okay, after the 3 cups of lukewarm water, I'm going to do a tablespoon and a half of yeast. And then a tablespoon and a half of salt. Now, some people may think that you need to let the yeast in warm water sit for a while and kind of mix up. I found honestly that doesn't make any difference. It rises really beautiful the way that it is. Last step is 6½ cups of flour. Now, a lot of times it's just tempting to take this guy in, scoop it up, and you're good to go. I was finding that some of my bread was not rising and as soft and fluffy as I wanted to. Yes, we live in an old farmhouse, and there's crazy sounds happening when the dishwasher runs and the sink and washing machine and all of that. So, take a big spoon and scoop it into, and then straighten it out. It's that little extra step, but trust me, it makes for a fluffier bread. So now, hopefully I don't lose count. Okay, 6½ cups of flour. I'm gonna put my dough attachment on and turn them on. Now, the longer this goes, it's gonna get very wet. When I used to make homemade bread at home, and when you do it in a bread maker, and even a lot of other recipes, you want the dough to be kind of clumped up around that dough hook. This is different. You want it to be like loose and not all in a big lump of dough. So I'm gonna let this go for a little bit while I clean up here a little. Okay, you can see at this stage it looks fairly dry, and it's been mixing about 2 minutes maybe, and we're just gonna let this go a little bit longer and you'll see what I mean, that it just starts to get looser. Okay, you can see how it's just sticking to the bottom now. I'm kind of wondering if I miscounted my flour just a little bit. No, it's pretty, it's definitely not all lumped up on that hook. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off. It's probably been, I don't know, about 5 minutes of mixing. Now normally I would take it out of the mixing bowl and put it in a very large, round mixing bowl. However, my really big bowl is currently in the refrigerator and yogurt is straining in it. So I'm just gonna leave it in this. I'm gonna take it off, the dough hook. And then, because I actually have somewhere I need to go tonight, I am not going to have time to bake this. So I'm gonna let it rise for about an hour on the counter, and then I'm gonna put it in the refrigerator and I'll deal with it tomorrow. Which is another beautiful thing. This recipe was actually designed that the dough will be fine if you mix it up and put it in the refrigerator for a week. We've gone about, I think they said it will go up to 14 days. Anything past about a week and it starts getting that sour taste, almost like sourdough does. So we don't like it going older than about 5 days. However, most times I just pick a day and I just go ahead and bake however many loaves I'm gonna bake with it. But I'm busy tonight. I'm gonna let it rise, stick it in the fridge, deal with it in the morning. Okay, it is now the next day. So I made the bread dough yesterday. I let it rise for about an hour and put it in the refrigerator. I pulled it out probably about 2 hours ago just because I wanted it to warm up just a touch. And it still could rise a lot from out of here. But I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is take it out and go ahead and shape it into 4 loaves. Sometimes I do 4, sometimes I do 2, sometimes I do 3. But I think this time around I'm going to go ahead and do 4. And the idea behind this recipe is you could stick this in the fridge and then let's say about an hour before you want to make supper, or 2 hours, you would just reach in and grab a glob of dough about that big, kind of let it rise a little and bake it, and then you would have a fresh loaf of bread. And then the next day if you wanted to do it again, you could for 4 loaves. So that was kind of the concept behind this. However, me personally, I just kind of like to go ahead, if I'm gonna bake bread and heat up the oven, I'm just gonna go ahead and do all my loaves in one shot. So I'm going to go ahead and shape this. Sometimes you can put a little flour on the counter, sometimes you can just put a little bit of oil. I'm gonna go ahead, just kind of spread my oil out a little bit. Now, I like to use this for the whole. If you buy like a sourdough kit, a lot of times you'll get something like this, along with a little basket and a nice little curved scraper that you can actually use to scrape this out. Mine ended up breaking, so I don't have it anymore, but I'm going to show you real quick. When I talk about splitting this into 4, it is still quite sticky and wet. I did not get that quite evenly. So if I wanted to, I could just split this in half and this guy would rise to at least twice this size. But like I said, I think I want some smaller loaves. I'm going to go ahead and split that in half again. Just kind of roll them up a little bit. Actually, because he was a little bigger, I think I'm going to do 2 smaller ones, more like a medium one. Now, I could let them just sit here and rise, but then I found to lift it up and put it into my Dutch oven, my loaves were just getting really ugly. So I use a little bit of parchment paper. I'm going to bring back my because I have oil here, I'm going to need to wipe this up just a touch. Find some towels and just kind of go ahead and cover these for probably an hour, and then I'll come out and preheat my oven with my Dutch oven inside of it. So nothing super fancy. My house is a little cooler today, so they may take a little longer to rise, plus I got them out of the refrigerator. Normally when I do a bread making day, I just kind of let it rise, never stick it in the refrigerator, and just go ahead, divide them out and let them rise again. So everything's kind of warmer and it just goes a little bit faster. When you're working with cold dough, sometimes the rising time will take a little longer. If you have a cooler kitchen, it'll also take a little longer. Okay, it's been about an hour since we shaped these, so let's take a look here. That was the bigger loaf. He's rising pretty nicely. Let me see if you can see him a little bit more. And then here was a smaller loaf. And more of a medium. So I think I'm going to start with him. But first things first, we need to preheat our oven to 425. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this guy in, lid and everything. Then when my oven beeps at me and lets me know that it has been preheated, I will come out and take this closest one and go ahead and put it in the Dutch oven. Okay, my oven just beeped to tell me that it's preheated. This guy right here, and this is what I love about doing it on parchment paper. Stick it right in there. Now if you want to get fancy, you absolutely can score it. You can either use a sharp knife or an actual scoring utensil and cut it. I rarely do, because ultimately that just takes more time and we eat it whether it's scored on top or not. So I put the lid on it, pop it back in here, and I'm going to set the timer for about 35 minutes. And we'll look at it when it comes out. If you do not have a Dutch oven, you can do this style in an actual bread loaf pan, or just find an oven safe, you know, container of some kind and put it in there. Obviously the cast iron kind of works best because you have a lid for it and everything like that, but you can do it even if you don't have cast iron, Dutch oven type of thing. You can do it in whatever. Okay, my timer's going off. We're going to take a peek at this, see if it is done. I normally like the top of it a little bit darker than that. I think I'm going to put them in for about another 5 minutes. Each oven's a little bit different. Each size of your loaves are probably going to be just a little bit different. So most times when you know that it's done, it's going to be pretty crispy, pretty brown on the top. If it's that lighter color brown, chances are it's still a little gooey in the center. We're going to check it again. That looks better. See, it's getting fairly crispy up on top. Next one, grab, pop you in. Because that one that I just put in, I think was the smallest loaf, I'm gonna go ahead and try 35 minutes again. We're at 425 for 35 minutes. This one took 40 minutes. I'm guessing this one's probably gonna take closer to 50 minutes because it's pretty large. Okay, the kids really want a slice of fresh homemade bread. So the second loaf was actually quite a bit smaller than this first loaf. This is more the color you want compared to this color. And this is not shadows, this is truly a little darker. This one I am confident is completely cooked out. This one in the center may be a little bit squishy, not really gummy, but like kind of squishy. Where this one I'm positive is all the way through. So, it's still a little warm. And yeah, you got that nice hard crust on the bottom. So that's kind of what it looks like in the center. You know, it's nice, and I always see people do that. It sponges right back. It is a very nice, chewy, hard. It's amazing. So if you make this kind of bread, I would love to hear from you. Even if you make sourdough, I would love to know the comparison and your thoughts on this. Hope you can soon start making your homemade bread, because this is very simple.